Welcome back to our next edition of Guns 101, our video welcome to new gun owners. It's brought to you by the Self-Defense Radio Network. I'm Rob Morse from Self-Defense Gun Stories. My partners are Amanda Suffolcool from Eye on the Target Radio, the guy doing the technical heavy lifting there behind the curtain. That's Paul Lathrop from the Polite Society podcast. We're honored to have Robert Pincus with us from the Personal Defense Network. Robert, I've heard you speak on this before, and I want you to expand it. We have a responsibility to mitigate risk. So minimizing trouble, avoiding risk, boy, when lethal tools are involved, that becomes really important.
It does. It's probably common sense, and probably anyone who is buying a gun specifically for defense, already is aware that there are problems out there in the world that you might stumble into, or in some cases you might bring upon yourself. Now, the hard part really for a lot of us is some of the ways we bring trouble on ourselves, quote unquote, is simply by trying to do the right thing, trying to protect others, trying to, make sure everything's okay. If you've heard the sheepdog analogy, the idea that there are people in society who want to take care of others, who want to protect the flock from the wolves, if you will. Well, we have to temper that desire for justice, desire to protect other people, even desire to make sure everything's right with our world when we bring a firearm into the mix. So the example I would always use is, I used to be the kind of guy who out in public might get involved in a situation where, a man and a woman were yelling and looked like the guy was maybe bullying or being abusive towards the woman. I'd be the kind of guy who would be, probably pretty likely in my younger days to, just at least walk over and make my presence known, in case it was something that, the guy was smart enough to at least say, oh, gee, somebody's watching, this is wrong, and knock it off, or possibly even say, hey, is everything okay over there? I wouldn't go running in, the fist clenched, but I would interject myself into that situation. When you start carrying a firearm, if you go over to that situation and you have no intention, obviously, of using the gun, but you simply just make your presence known. You say, hey, is everything okay over there? Well, at that point, if a fight incurs or a fight ensues and you incur a moment where you need to use the gun to defend yourself, a lot of people would try to make the argument that you started that or you put yourself in that situation. And while that may not make the world a better, great place, that's the reality of the world we live in. So we have to be careful about what kinds of situations we get ourselves into. There's a bigger picture that's even simpler than that. And it's simply, don't do dangerous things, don't do silly things, don't do stupid things when you're wearing a gun. If you're going to go out and drink, probably not a good idea to be wearing your gun. Not only is it illegal for obvious reasons in a lot of places, but even places where it's legal to wear a gun in a bar while you're drinking, it still probably doesn't make the most sense. We know that there's more likely to be interpersonal violence in that environment, and we know that your judgment, both about what's happening around you and the actions that you take, are going to be changed by that alcohol. So those would be some examples in the public space of how we want to make sure that we're minimizing the likelihood that we can get into a confrontation, or that any confrontation we get into could escalate to the point where we would need our gun. And obviously there's some situations inside of our home where we can do things to avoid conflict as well.
Wow, I followed you and then you stopped. Keep going about the minimizing the degree of conflict in a domestic situation where we are.
Sure. Well, let's talk about, you use the domestic, and that, of course, makes me, jump right to my mind with the train we're going on in the story or the anecdote I just told, to think about domestic violence. One of the things that we know is a part of this whole corona crisis, quarantine, stay-at-home situation that we're all in, is that domestic violence is on the rise. In another video, we've talked. Did I lose somebody?
No, you're good. You're good. Keep going.
You're good. Keep going.
Oh, okay. I thought I heard somebody on that side. Sorry about that. So we talked about inside the home, we brought a firearm in. That means we have to do the right thing to make sure that no one who's in the home who's not authorized to have access to the gun gets to it. Well, we need to understand when we're in close quarters, when we're stressed emotionally, when we have anxiety about all the things that are going on outside the home in the world, maybe there's some anxiety and some emotion and some frustration with things that are happening in the house. And if that's going to potentially bubble over and escalate into confrontation with the people we're living with, We definitely don't want a firearm to be part of that. And that's why even sometimes it's a good idea to sequester yourself from the firearm, not just the other people in the house, but if you know that you're going to let off some steam and have a session at the kitchen table where there may be some raised voices and there may be some yelling and there may be some venting, hopefully that resolves whatever's been building up inside the house, that's not the time to have that gun sitting on the kitchen table or probably even be wearing it. If you are going to decide to partake in alcohol and you're going to have a few drinks, again, that's a great time to unload the gun and put the gun more into a storage mode. When we think about being inside the home and the people outside the home potentially being a threat, let's sort of step away from the corona crisis moment and think about just what is normal or what has been normal life in the United States. One of the ways that you can avoid trouble is by making your house stronger, making your house safer, making your house more invulnerable to someone who wants to hurt you, or even making it less attractive as a target to someone who might want to come in and hurt whoever's in there. Locking your doors, trimming your hedges, making sure that there's a line of sight to the edge of your property so you can see someone coming in and that they know they're going to be seen if they're approaching. Make sure that you can see outside of your house around your door, but preferably not with glass that's right next to the door that could be broken, but maybe with a camera. And whether it's an indoor-outdoor camera or one of these very inexpensive, this camera is available for less than $100. It works on your Wi-Fi. It can talk to your smartphone, but it can pan and tilt and zoom, and you can use your voice through it. There's a lot of different cameras out there like that. We can get the doorbells and to let us talk to someone on the porch and see whoever's out there on the porch so that we don't have to be opening our door to a potential violent attacker. I'm thinking about reinforcing the doors, whether it's with deadbolts or even if you're in a hotel room or you're thinking of a bedroom that's inside your home. If someone's already kicked in the front door or forced their way in, you can have a barricade room inside your house with an exterior glass door, with a deadbolt, with something like this wedget that makes it surprisingly hard to get into any bedroom or any kind of interior room in your house. So thinking about how you can strengthen your house, strengthen the perimeter, strengthen your relationships inside the house, and be really honest with yourself about when emotions are rising high or when the alcohol may be flowing, separating yourself and those in the home from the gun. All of those are ways to minimize risk and de-escalate potentially situations where you could be forced into needing to use the gun, but you could have avoided them in the first place.
I hear you so loud, Robert. You're telling me again, we win 100% of the conflicts we avoid.
That's exactly it.
Absolutely. And that's a lot of people miss that in the details.
Oh, and that makes so much sense. One of the things that I heard once that just kind of stuck with me was that having a firearm on your person should make you more polite, not less polite. It should be that if you have an ego and an attitude and a gun, you don't carry them all at the same time. You put your ego or your attitude on the shelf and put your gun on, and then you swap the two. But you never carry that ego with a gun at the same time.
Yeah, you have to be willing to swallow your pride. That comes down to the de-escalation part. You talk about like road rage would be an example. Somebody cuts you off on the highway, they cut you off on the highway. If you give them the finger and then they cut you off again, and then you're racing them to the exit, or they're cutting you off, and you pull over and say, "What's your problem?" And you've just created a potential lethal argument over something that maybe the guy was just changing radio stations or who knows what, swerving around. Apparently my toddler really wants to say hi.
Hi.
Oh, okay. Hi.
Yeah, you can go ahead.
And she is the reason why we're doing what we're doing, because we live to protect that.
She's been over here kind of whispering at me, and I didn't know if you guys could hear it or not, so I let her come in and say hi. But that de-escalation is incredibly important. If someone takes your parking space, someone gives you a dirty look going in or out of the store, you just got to let that stuff go. Probably all the time. We'd all be better people, but definitely when you're carrying a gun.
Need to just let it go. Just be a better person and not engage. There you go. So Rob Pincus, personaldefensenetwork.com. You're going to see a lot more of Rob's stuff if you go to his website, and you're going to like what you see. So spend the time and take a look at it. We'll be back with another video in this video lineup.